I'm sure we all know somebody who's just never happy. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It doesn't matter how much money they have. They just simply aren't happy. Well, that person may even be you as you find yourself listening to this short little devotional vlog. And if that's you, I want to submit something to you today. The reason you probably aren't happy is because you aren't content. And the reason you aren't content with where you are, where you're going, and what you're doing is more than likely because you're looking in the wrong places for contentment. So often what happens is we find our lives lacking joy, lacking fulfillment, and we go, I need this, I need that. And we begin to listen to what the world says about happiness and contentment, and we begin to try to fill our lives full of things and stuff. And what we end up finding out is that doesn't make us any more content and any more happy than we were before. The reason for this is because real contentment does not come through anything the world has to offer. Real contentment, as we're going to see today in Philippians chapter 4, it comes from Christ and Christ alone. We're in Philippians chapter 4. Let's look now at Philippians 4, verse number 10. Paul writes, "But I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at last your care for me has flourished again. Though surely you did care, but you lacked opportunity. Now that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. I know how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." The last verse is one of the most popular verses in the Bible. And because of its popularity, it is also one of the most commonly misused Bible verses. I go to weight rooms, in high school sometimes, and I walk in there and plastered above the bench press is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Well, did you know that verse has nothing to do with your bench press? Did you know that verse has nothing to do with you finishing college? It has really nothing to do with your success in this area or that area. But that verse has everything to do with being happy and being content. Remember, Paul wrote this letter to the church of Philippi while he was in prison. And what's happened is they sent him a gift, a monetary gift. And Paul is, one of the purposes of this letter is to say thank you. But he also doesn't want them to begin to think that he just wants their money, because he doesn't. And so he goes on this little rant, if you will, about contentment. And he says, look, I want you to know, I know how to be happy, whether I have a lot or whether I have a little. I know how to be happy, whether or not I'm hungry or whether I'm full. I know how to be happy. I know how to be content. And just in those two verses right there, what we learn is that contentment, true happiness does not come from anything that the world has to offer. True contentment and true happiness, it does not come through wealth and health. True happiness and true contentment, it does not come from fame. True happiness and true contentment, it doesn't come from how many square feet your house is. True happiness and true contentment, it does not come from how long your bass boat is. True happiness and true contentment, it does not come and is not based upon how much money is in your bank account and how good your credit score is. True contentment and true happiness does not come from how many vacations you can afford to take per year. True happiness and true contentment is not based upon how many friends you have. Church, true contentment and true happiness comes from one thing, and it comes from being satisfied and having your soul satisfied through your relationship with Christ and Christ alone. And when you find satisfaction and fulfillment in Jesus and in who you are in His eyes, do you know what happens? You find the strength to be happy and to be joyful and to be content and to be satisfied no matter what life situation you find yourself in. You discover the secret to joy in the midst of persecution. You discover the secret to peace in the midst of death. You discover the secret to satisfaction in the midst of the storms of life. What Paul is saying is, I know how to be happy because my joy and my satisfaction comes from one place. And that one place is Jesus. The one person that brings me satisfaction, true contentment, true purpose is Jesus and my relationship with Him and my walk with Him. And because of that, because of Jesus, because of who He is and what He's done, and because of my walk with Him, no matter what situation I find myself in, I find happiness and I find contentment. And friends, that's what I want to tell you today. I want to tell you today that the reason you are not content is not because you don't have enough money. The reason you're not content is not because you don't have enough toys. The reason you're not content is quite simple. It's because you are not where you need to be at in your walk with Christ. Because as Paul says in Ephesians chapter 3, he speaks about the unsearchable riches of Christ. Because when you really dive into searching Jesus and learning more about His character, His person, and His work, what happens is your soul is content in the fact that God loves you, you love God, and He has given you a purpose and a destiny. And when your soul finds that truth, and you meditate on it, and you dwell on that, do you know what happens? The longing of your soul is finally satisfied in the person of Jesus. True contentment today can be found through a real walk with Jesus, through letting Jesus be enough for you, because He's more than you could ever need.